Hey everyone, so one of the best ways to instantly add flavor to your playing is by expanding your chord vocabulary. In blues music, there's so many cool, simple chords that you can use, and you can use this to spice up your playing, and you can use it for comping. But you can even add these into your lead playing, and that's just a way you can take your lead playing to a whole nother level. So today I'm going to show you 3 variations of chords that just use 3 notes. They're easy chords to play, but you can do all kinds of cool stuff with these, and they're going to really add depth and variety to your sound. Okay, so the first one we're going to start with is based around bass note inversions. The idea here is you take an E chord like this, and you can play it using this voicing. It has a really cool sound. Now that's the first inversion where I'm playing a G sharp in the bass, and it's based around this idea here. I'm playing the upper part of an E chord using this form here. I'm just using these 2 notes right here, and then playing the G sharp in the bass. So it's an E chord, but it's inverted like that. So that's the shape we're going to use. And once you kind of learn that shape, there's a couple of variations you can use around it, and you can slide it around, right? But here's the kind of underlying idea of, if you're playing a basic blues, one of the things you can do as you move between the chords is this. These kind of walk-ups in between the chords. And you can use that little 3-note inversion. Sometimes people call those shell chords, where it's like a very simple type of chord. You can use those to create these cool kind of like moving bass lines. So there's 2 variations to the chord. One is this, where you're just 1 fret apart, and the other variation is this, where you're 2 frets apart, like that. So now, theoretically speaking, this is a F sharp minor 6, or you could say it's a B7 with an F sharp in the bass. But really, the device we're using it for is we're going to do this. So we're using these 2 shapes here. So you're going to start with the E, then you're going to go to this first shape, and I'm going to label these by the bass note. So it's an F sharp in the bass. Then you're going to go up to a G, same exact shape, and then you're going to go to that, stretch it out. You can play like this or like this, and that's the inversion of the E chord. So you're basically going from this E, and then you're chromatically walking up to another E. So you can add that in when you're going from the E to the A chord. So here's one of the interesting things is blues, be quiet amp, I need new tubes in my amp. People sometimes think blues is really easy, right? And actually it's one of the most complex and nuanced forms of music. And here's the reason why. When you play a blues, E, A, B, for example, you're not playing a 1-4-5 progression. What you're actually doing is every time you change chords in blues, you're actually modulating to a different key, because each chord in a blues is a 7th chord. So you're going from an E7 to an A7 to a B7. And each one of those chords is actually related to a certain key. You're actually changing key every time you change chords. Because of that, there's a whole world of tonality and interesting things you can do around each chord, and you can change with each chord as well. One of the beautiful things about a 7th chord is it's one of the most versatile and colorful chords that you can do all kinds of things around it, because a 7th chord by its nature wants to resolve, it wants to move. So whenever you play a 7th chord, what it's saying is, I want to move. And usually, like in classical music, the dominant 7th chord would move home to the tonic chord. So for example, an E7 would always resolve to an A, like that. But in blues music, one of the fascinating things about blues music, they took that idea of using these dominant chords that kind of want to resolve and they want to move, but they never resolve back to the tonic chord. They always just keep moving and modulating to a different key. So that's why blues is one of the most amazingly versatile and colorful styles of music. So you can do all kinds of things over a dominant chord, because there's a lot of tension built into it, Like there's no other form of music really with blues and jazz, you can take a dominant chord, like this A chord here, A7 chord. You can add microtones to it. You can put chromatic notes over it. You can superimpose other chords over the top of it. There's all kinds of fun you can have. So that's one of the reasons you can do all this cool kind of chord stuff. So once you've got this little moving bass line thing, you can do that with the other chords as well. So you can go up to the A chord, 4 chord. It's not really a 4 chord, it's a modulation. You can do the same move, and then with the B chord. So you can imagine you can start to have fun with that. And you don't just have to use that exact formula, but you can be... So you can just kind of play around with it like that. And then you can start to play with those voicings as well. Like, for example, when you get to the A, instead of playing like this, you can use that same kind of idea of this little shell voicing. You can play the A7 like this, and the B7 like this. Or you can go backward. B7. You can have a lot of fun with these cool shapes here. Okay, next one. Let's talk about what I call dominant 7th movements. And this is the idea basically where you're playing around with these dominant 7th shapes. And one of the best ways to understand this is basically blues is based around this boogie woogie thing, right? Or now that is actually a movement where you're actually playing chords that are outlining the sound of an E7. Like if I expand that a little bit further, you can go like that, and I'm just basically harmonizing. So you can do that with each chord. And then the A. Expand that even further to be that little movement there, and that's the same as, but you're kind of like opening up those chords. So you're playing an E, and then you're doing this thing here, which is expanding that out. So it's basically an A with a C sharp in the bass, A over C sharp, and then you're actually going to this little D voicing here. So it's a D chord with an F sharp. So you're going from an E to an A to a D. So that's interesting that over a blues, over just an E chord, you can actually have that tonality lying underneath one chord. And that shows you the power of the blues. There's just like a lot more going on harmonically. So once you can do that, there's all kinds of other ways you can expand on that idea, like kind of James Burton style licks. So the idea there is you could be playing an E, hammer onto the E, then play the A, by flattening your finger there, and then this little shape here is kind of outlining the upper part of the E7 chord. Now that little idea there, it's great for rhythm, but it's really great for lead. So say if I was playing over a C chord, you got your C chord right here under your fingertips, and then you can outline those dominant seventh kind of movements like this. There's a million variations around that kind of Chuck Berry style licks, but the idea is you're holding this little triad shape here, hammering onto it, and then you're going back and forth between that little movement between the root chord, doing that kind of muddy waters, and you can have endless fun with that. There's loads of ways you can do it. It's all kind of Chuck Berry style licks, and then you can extend that up. Essentially, you're going from this shape to this shape, and then you go to this little double stop here. So I just use that. I use that shape all the time. You know, down here. So there's one of the big ideas, you know, when you're playing chords, essentially is using that movement, kind of like from the 4 to the 1. And that just works great in your leads. Let's talk about the last one. This is amazing. This is going to blow your mind. So I call this the magic shape, and actually it's a bunch of different shapes, but it's the idea of a simple 3-note sliding shapes that kind of work like a Swiss Army knife in your blues playing. And they're these magic chords that you can kind of slide all over the place. And you can use it in your solos or in your comping. And it's basically the style of people like T-Bone Walker would use these really interesting chords. So let me take you through them. So there's a couple of different shapes, but the first one is this shape here, right? Or you could have it down here. It's a sliding shape. So it's basically what it is if I'm playing in the key, it's the root, the third, and then the seventh on top. So it's just 3 notes. So you can basically start adding that in. So that shape, you can slide it around. So there's your E, there's your A, there's your B. Now with blues, because of this kind of dominant tension, you can slide into chords. So that gives you 3 chords here, E, A, B, and then if you go a half step below, you can slide up or down here. B, so you've got 6 chords now. And then you can also slide down into them. So now you've got 9 chords. So you can move this shape around a lot. You can even do double slides into it like this. Now, here's where it gets interesting. If you take this shape and you move it onto the next set of strings, it takes on a different characteristic. So if I play that shape up here, like this, and put the bass note in, that becomes an E9 chord. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, right there. So there's an E9 chord. But you don't need to put the bass note in, right? Because the bass player or whoever the rhythm guitarist playing the bass, so you can just do this. So that shape there is an E9, and down here, A9, and then here would be B9. And then you can take the same application there as you can slide into it. Okay, so you got 9 chords there. But then, here's where it gets really interesting. Say if I play an A here, play the A9 here. If I slide that up a whole step, this shape here becomes an A6. So when you slide from here to here, you're going from an A9 to an A6, which is a cool blues move, a T-Bone Walker style move, right? And you can put that in your leads, right? Okay, now let's take that same exact shape and move it over from here to here. And it becomes the seventh shape, a dominant seventh shape. But it's this famous little shape here. So it's like the little turnaround shape, right? Now, you can put it in your leads like this. But you can also use it in this instance too. You can use it for diminished shapes. This is like Django Reinhardt would do this. You can use diminished chords all over the place because you're using these seventh chords. But one of the cool ways you can use a diminished chord is this. If you play an A7 chord, an extension of that is called an A7 flat 9, which is this chord here, where you basically play an A7 and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, flat 9. You're going to add that note, a flat 9, which is the same as going up a half step from the root, which is a very dissonant sounding note. But if you play it in the context of like a blues or jazz, that's kind of extending that dominant idea of like, I want to go somewhere, I want to change. So that sound is a great sound. Now, the way that you can use that or like this. And a good way to use that is when you're playing over the 4 chord. To get back to the 1 chord, you essentially put a diminished chord in there. That chord there is a D sharp diminished. So you can play it like this. With diminished chords, you can slide them up every 3 frets, and it just repeats the same notes. So that's what the magic of diminished chords. So they're these kind of like fractal chords where they just keep repeating. That's the same chord, just slid around. So you can go basically from an A to a D, and then right before you go back to the A, you can go. So you can add any of those in. So a good place to start that is right here. So you can go. And one way, the typical way to do that is as a turnaround, basically where you go from the A to the D, back to the A, and then you go to this little shape here, which is essentially, that's the A7. And then when you slide it down, that's like a diminished chord there. So that's kind of the idea with the turnarounds. But basically, those little diminished chords can be kind of passing chords. So starting on the A string, you've got these nice bassy sounding chords. And then on the middle string, starting on the D strings, you've got this kind of nice little blues move. And then on the top strings, you've got this kind of turnaround idea. Or the diminished idea. So, you know, when I'm playing an A7 chord, I'm going to use an A sharp diminished right here. But when I'm playing a D7, D going to the 4 chord, I just move that down a half step, play it here. And then when I play the E chord, the 5 chord, I move that shape up a half step. So that basically fills all the gaps, and you can just play anything you want. But there's a A7 flat 9 or an A sharp diminished. There's a D7 flat 9 or a D sharp diminished. Wants to go back to the 1 chord. And then there's an E7 flat 9 or an E sharp diminished or an F diminished. So you can have a lot of fun playing with those shapes, but it all sounds very complicated, the theory behind that, but it's basically just this shape. And you can just move it around. It's a very magical sliding shape.